except the Nico and the Gwen.
Yeah, it's very much the red side bans are the red side bans. RNG though, what do you want to take as your first pick? I mean, usually it would be something like the Xin Zhao. That's the best in class remaining jungler. It's just going to be locked in right here. Good pickup for milkyway. He likes this champion quite a lot, and it gives him that proactivity that he's at least been trying to do on the map so far. See if him and Niket maybe pair up, get him another priority matchup in the bot lane, then maybe they can go roam around. What's the response here from LNG? They're going to go towards the Pantheon, right? So they are also going to play a more aggressive style of composition. And actually, with the Kai'Sa not banned out early on, maybe you can go for that full dive composition here from LNG.
We talk a lot about these big-time junglers that have rose. We got Nefiri, we got Vi in game 1. We have a Zinzao you pointed out, but Pantheon sneakily rising up in that priority and also win rate. So I like that for Xiaoxu. If we get it in the jungle, that's where you most often see in the LPL. Speaking of LP, not the L, grabs up that Kai'Sa as a top side of strength and tankiness is building for RNG as Xiaoxu will land on the Scion. And this is already showing a pretty scale-oriented draft for RNG as they complete their top side.
Very much so. Going to be looking towards the later stages of the game. That Xin Zhao is the bridge between the early and the late game. The ulti gives you a lot of extra survivability as well, which is very helpful. Very different kind of composition here from LNG. Much more focused on the early stages of the game, on the skirmishes, on the fighting at the moment. The Ambessa would help towards that. Also has a fine matchup into the Scion. Not really going to be looking to kill him. It's going to be a pretty boring one to watch in the early stages of the game. It's about getting later on, and I do also like the pairing between the Ambessa and the Pantheon because you could just get that point and click stun from the Pantheon, and it makes landing that public execution so much easier.
We talk a lot about ease of execution and the way LNG has been able to really capitalize on what they draft and bring it towards the Rift. We saw it last time with the Dredgeline Seismic Shove. I think you pointed out well, Bloxer. This will be the same sort of style for Game 2. Looking for the Pantheon stun, likely from Xiaoxu, into that public execution. But I'm intrigued to see how the second phase of bans is approached, knowing that we pick different lanes on either side. It's going to be marksman priority, trying to punish JiaQi for LNG, and looks like RNG want to take away Haichao's more comfortable champions.
Indeed, see if they can just make it so he's going to have to play this one out without quite so much ease, without being able to sit quite so far back. I mean, I think that the Azir works well in these full dive compositions because you can play backwards on Azir, but you can also equally go flying in, use that ulti to be able to bring people back. Also going to be the Ahri taken off the board. Again, a very mobile champion. So Haichao, I know, losing out on a lot of what he really likes to play, what looks best alongside this composition. They can potentially leave his pickup until the last pick right here and just grab a support for themselves. Plenty of dive supports available if they want them. Instead, actually hovering towards something like the Victor. You can't really dive in, you're going to get left a little bit behind. At the same time, you can just drop that ulti and deal a ridiculous amount of damage. It does work.
It does work. It's a comfortable lane to be in as well. Both, Tangyuan and Haichao kind of handshake scaling up. But I find it pretty intriguing that Victor fits into this composition. My eyes gravitate towards some of these marksman hovers. We are not this deep where you have to pick like a Samira or a Nyla to try and get really crafty. I was going to say, you've got a lot of marksmen up for you, JiaQi, so he'll land on the Tristana, which is probably the AD carry that's rose the most in priority since we got to the Rumble stage.
Yeah, again, one of these hyperscalers that you can look towards the later stages of the game with. Between the Scion and the Tristana, your late game is incredibly potent right here as RNG. The thing that worries me is that RNG have not been good at getting themselves towards the later stages of the game. They've been losing early and hard in a lot of these matchups. So we'll see if they're going to be able to get themselves there. The Rel going to be the final pickup, just works well alongside that Xin Zhao, and a good support alongside the Tristana. But what is the final pickup here for LNG? The best thing into the Rel is always going to be the Alistar. You can't pick that one up. There are going to be a couple dashes you could stop here with the Poppy, and the Poppy has been rising in priority as well. It's so strong in so many ways, especially though around the dives, something Pantheon loves to do too.
I really like this pick, Bloxer, because you called out the dashes, but also that Keeper's Verdict, right? You're staring down an RNG comp that wants to create like an unbreakable wall at the front for their range-scaled Tristana and Ryze that's impossible to break through. You got a Cressigar to deal with, a Scion, and a Rel. What does Zhuo get to do on this Poppy? You hit the right Keeper's Verdict. See you later, front line. Hey, look, the floodgates have opened for this Ambessa. Everyone can now charge forward, and you have the flank angles, and it plays into the fact that LNG as a team are going to have to be the ones that are way more aggressive, like you mentioned, in the early, but most importantly in the mid-game phase to avoid the ultimate scaling RNG comp.
Exactly. LNG, they have left a lot on their shoulders in the early game. They've left a lot on their star jungler in the early game, especially with this Pantheon. Not the kind of pick you want to be going into the late game with, but it's not like they can't play the late game. The Victor does give you a little bit of late game insurance that you can potentially try to look around. And as we said, RNG not necessarily great at getting themselves into the later stages of the game anyway. I don't dislike the composition, though, that we are seeing out of RNG. I think it works in and of itself very well. Exactly. It has a good identity. You're looking at the Xin Zhao to sort of carry you through the early stages of the game and help you with those skirmishes. But we just haven't seen RNG really be able to show up on any of these pickups so far. So are they going to be able to put it together right here? This is practically a do-or-die matchup.
As close as we're going to get without going the whole way here. RNG looking to find just their second game win of the Rumble stage in Group Nirvana that will save them from the 0-3 slide, a fate that OMG has already seen at the very hands of this LNG roster, who are trying desperately to insert themselves into play-in implications for Split 2. Two sides of a very different coin, two sides of very different momentum-led campaigns so far. But can the tides change for RNG with this scaling comp? We'll find out as we arrive back on the familiar battle arena.
We had so many jokes about LNG coming into this Split 2.
So many.
The classic, have you won a game in 2025? Yes, obviously, we're 4 months in from everybody in the world bar LNG. All of a sudden, though, they have turned right around. Mainly because of this guy we're looking at on our screen right here. Xiaoxu joins up and just turns things on its head for LNG. All of a sudden, they look like a far more cohesive unit. They've got that aggression and that proactivity that they were sorely missing. And it's just been so wonderful to see the turnaround of this squad.
Can they keep the snowball rolling? Can they create the avalanche to wipe out the rest of Group Nirvana? We will have to see here. It's one game at a time, but in this game for LNG, it's all about playing as aggressive with limits as possible in most of these lanes, mostly towards the top side. You're looking at Zika, which he will be pretty comfortable up against that side, and that's maybe partly why Xiaoxu has once again decided to path top to bot on this Pantheon.
You can look to influence onto this lane at the very early stages. Maybe you can abandon it, not necessarily keep looking towards it, or maybe you just want to keep repeatedly diving. We highlighted it earlier, right? Pantheon loves a good dive early. The point-and-click stun just makes it so much easier to begin the execution on them, and actually Poppy loves a dive as well. It's so much easier to land a stun onto a champion when there's a nice tower there stood right around at the beginning stages, be able to stun into them. For the minute, LNG going to have to push, as you'd expect in this lane. It's very much going to be on the scaling later game for JiaQi right here with the Tristana, a pick that, as you said, been rising in priority.
Rising through these camps are milkyway and Xiaoxu towards the bot side. That word from milkyway early on did spot Xiaoxu, so you can really see exactly what tempo your opposing jungler is at by this point. And we do see Xiaoxu actually grabbing early level 3, gets the first crash into that topside wave. So on the flip side of this game state, as much time as you can stall or go even, especially in these solo lanes, you're happy if you're an RNG fan.
Exactly. RNG, they're not going to be looking to get too proactive during the early game. Really, they shouldn't be looking to get proactive before the 2-item mark. Even then, still might need to be a little bit respectful of your opponents. The thing is, you have to be respectful, get yourself into the later stages of the game without just conceding everything. You can't just give over all 6 grubs and all the drakes and all of that. You are going to have to fight around some of these lanes, and you do have the ability to do that. Xin Zhao obviously skirmishes incredibly well early on. You've got the roaming potential of that Ryze ulti and that Scion ulti, so they're not at a complete disadvantage. Now lots of pings on in the bottom lane.
Oh, as Niket flies in, they're going after Xiaoxu himself when he flashes forward, gets JiaQi to pop the cleanse, but JiaQi's health bar was far too low. Steadfast Presence does cancel the hop forward, but JiaQi doesn't need to get this kill. milkyway does. RNG, the team to come out swinging early, and they bite off 2 kills doing it.
There we go. That was LNG just over-aggressing right there. Yes, you've got more power in the early game, but the second that Xiaoxu just gets jumped and surrounded, your shield can only help you out from a single direction. It's taken out on that one. And nobody ended up picking up the Scuttle Crab either. It was just a little bit of a mistake right there out of LNG. And look at where the kills go, right? You managed to get a kill onto JiaQi and one onto milkyway. I think that's the perfect split of kills for the minute, as it just gives power into these lanes where you're really going to be needing them.
The value of that cleanse really showing through as well. Xiaofeng, with his back against the wall, you're seeing this replay, tries to turn this. With the low range of the Kaisa and JiaQi just popping that cleanse instantly, makes it really hard for them to push this fight any further.
Absolutely, and I like the aggression right there out of Niket. I have been pretty impressed with him, considering the fact that RNG suck. You know, I've been enjoying the way he's been playing quite a lot of his supports. He's been trying so hard to be aggressive. Him and milkyway have been some of the attempted bright sparks for the team. Whenever something goes well for them, it feels like it's a combo between these two, between the jungle and support, roaming around, getting something done. It doesn't turn into victories for them, but at least it's an attempt.
Attempted lane swap coming across here. I like this a lot from RNG. Whenever you have the Scion, you're always comfortable throwing him into the 1v2. It doesn't immediately get responded to by RNG, but their bottom lane will shift up a bit later, so they'll lose some critical minions and allow JiaQi's gold lead to start to grow a bit more, with grubs on the horizon in under 30 seconds, and milkyway looking to get even more proactive as he reganks this bot side, looking for the target. Zika, the knockup lands, Wind becomes lightning as well. They get the flash out of Zika. And he will get to safety, but a key summoner to find in that best and more room to breathe for Xiaoxu.
This is why you pick yourself up the Jhin in this game, where you've got yourself the heavy scaling composition, because the Jhin can skirmish and get aggressive early on. You really need that bridge to be able to carry you through, and so far, so good. Getting the flash out of Zika, you can regank that one. It's going to really help. At the same time, you also just buy extra space for Xiaoxu to be able to play this one out. Doesn't have to worry so much about potentially getting aggressed upon. We do now have the Drake and the Grubs both spawned up. It's going to be a Hextech Drake, a brilliant one to be able to get as an individual. You can see Xiaofeng in the area, but not actually feeling comfortable to be able to try start this one up right now.
Yeah, Xiaofeng having a little bit of trouble finding the cross-map place to respond to. He doesn't really punish milkyway for going for that bot lane gank. Yep. Doesn't jump on the Grubs, takes the reset. Spotted taking that reset by the Scuttle Crab, so milkyway says, all right, I'll start this Drake up, and it's going to be a bit before Xiaofeng can really trade Grubs. With lane priority, might only be able to get away with one, but we'll see with Zhuo and LP able to swing down to help him.
In contrast of the previous game, Grubs are going to be vital in this one. As LNG, you really don't want to be giving Grubs over to a Tristana and a Scion. Those two can mess you up in side lanes. Tristana already going to start mauling through the towers, even without having a couple of these. So far, you can see, like you said, Xiaofeng just going to be able to pick up one without any more priority to really try to play around. Just going to have to back off here. This is well played during the early stages again from milkyway. He's been looking good when it comes to his Drake and Grub decision making. Let's see what happens with the second set though, because obviously you do lose out onto one. Right. 3 for 3 would be absolutely fine. That's not going to be the end of the world for LNG, but they really can't afford to be giving away 5. I think 5 over to RNG would really open them up to be in a good spot in this game.
And that issue can really compound knowing Tangyuan is also on the rise, who has a lot of safety inside lanes, the way he builds, and with the Realm Warp later on. So I think that's a great pain point to point out there, Bloxer, that LNG, knowing how they have to win the game too in the mid game, I wouldn't be shocked if they just force a full 5-on-5 fight, or at least bring 5 members to that next set of Grubs with how the game state looks if they don't.
Go for it at this point, right? You want to get a little bit of extra proactivity through. You've only lost your jungler in one fight. You know, you're not going to be too far behind.
Here we go. First ultimate from Xiaofeng. Gets Tangyuan on a flash, but the follow comes across, and there is that proactivity showing through again from the LNG jungler. Getting kills back on the board, inching them back in to the conversation of the gold lead.
And that's why you pick up the Pantheon. Ground Starfall going to be so strong at just getting you involved in these lanes. The flash stun does mean that you're going to be missing that combo out on the next couple of fights, but still not going to be the end of the world, and picking up that kill there, especially the fact it goes over to Xiaofeng, I think is exactly what LNG needed to just stabilize this game, stop the gold lead from getting away from them a little bit, now pull it back to pretty much even with that play. See though, lots of pings happening down in this bottom side of the map. This blue buff could potentially be fought over. I think it would be a little bit risky. You do have priority in the mid lane though for RNG. It's already been started
reset
up.
Too. It's LNG bot lane with a reset, so yeah, this blue buff is going over to milkyway. Small little wins. Stealing
just
some
has to
camps.
concede it. That kind of sucks for him, right? You really don't want to be losing out onto that blue buff. One of the things the Pantheon can suffer from in the clear is just running through your mana.
Not going to be able to use the blue buff to come back out on top with that one. And he's even forcing LP and Zhuo to come down, clear out vision, and think about even just pathing back towards this bottom lane turret. Tristana, even with just the touch of the Void, can really burn through some of those plates. Luckily, LP and Zhuo do get back there to cover the turret for now. But the timer is still the same here for LNG. When does Xiaofeng get the Grand Starfall back up? And where can he find a window to impact it? Gotta think top lane is the most tantalizing one. Is Zika has himself somewhat of a CS lead, but you wanted something more out of the Mbessa into the Scion lane.
If you could get extra aggression going through, maybe pick up a kill, turn this one into a very uncomfortable lane for the Scion, would very much be a great place to look towards. I think mid lane also another potential option. You know, the Flash only halfway back to being available for Tangyuan, and without it, the Rise very vulnerable to being jumped in the exact same manner as we saw previously. Lots of good available options for Xiaofeng. Got a minute until the grubs are going to be spawning, minute 30 until the Drake is up and available. One of the joys of picking up that first Drake and a couple grubs for RNG is that they don't have to be pulled around the map. They're going to be happy with whichever side of the trade they're going to be able to get for themselves.
And they can coast, and coasting is fine for RNG at this early stage of the game. They are a ways away from their damage dealers getting towards those win cons, even the tanks, right, with the Scion scaling for more health. You want to give time for the Roa and the Seraphs to come alive for Tangyuan before you can even get damage items. And the Tristana, even though known sometimes as a lane bully, can scale so hard, especially with the current item pathings. So every minute that there's kind of a stalemate, the lead for RNG, the threat of RNG comp continues to grow.
They're just looking scarier and scarier. LNG going to need to nip that in the bud. Zhuo right now very much going to be spotted. And they don't feel comfortable as LNG stepping up too much further. Zhuo, this jungle isn't yours right now, buddy.
Oh, he's just going to get the steadfast presence to cancel the crash down. But flash burn for Zhuo. Vision Wars. Yeah, proving plentiful. And Xiaofeng, you were also on a ward, my friend. So guessing these grubs is getting a lot more riskier by the second. Oh, that never feels great.
Not ideal right there. And the Vision War very much being won here by RNG. It's making LNG uncomfortable in trying to step up at the moment. Gonna get the fast track towards the pit. Yeah, all five gonna feel so good. JiaQi, Zhao, Tangyuan, all of them are going to be more than happy to pick this one up. You can see straight on down towards the Drake is going to be Xiaofeng, but I gotta be honest, you can still make this rotation happen as RNG if you want to. You can also just as easily concede this Drake and not worry about it.
Yeah, it's 1 for 1, and you got the Tristana Mites and 5 grubs. You got the Scion and the Rise as well. We're going to be plentiful in the side lane, so winning trade, that is the deal here for RNG. As milkyway will also just steal away camps. So another impressive early game here from RNG, but the question is always going to become, can they keep that going once fights break out? Because LNG have drafted a comp that in this mid-game phase is really potent and dangerous, especially on one items, fighting as a unit.
And talking of one items, most of those are going to be coming through right now. It is going to be the Roa onto Haichao, so this is going to be the much more slowly building up pick that we expect from the Victor. Everybody else is going to be so down to scrap right now. The Youngtail's arrows, especially with that Sundered Sky up and available. You're just so strong as Xiaofeng to be able to keep yourself alive throughout these fights, get into the back line, just get the healing off constantly. We'll see, though, if that aggression is going to come through, because in the early game, you know, falling behind a little bit in terms of CS, hasn't been able to be quite as proactive as milkyway. And that's quite a big risk when you're playing this Pantheon. You need to get proactive. Now, you don't have to do it during the first 11 minutes of the game. It's at this point where you have to now get out onto the map and exert your presence.
Oh, okay. Maybe a mistake here for Tangyuan getting punished.
So fast.
I mean, yeah, he has the rune that keeps him pretty safe.
Yeah.
And back to farming creeps on the side lane. This is Victor and Rise Gaming right here. We love it. Just fighting over waves.
We're watching it too.
That's how slow this game is. And again, that leans into RNG. We are a bit stunned with how LNG are slowly playing this map, waiting for these items to come across. This is the point in the game that LNG drafted to look for kills, to look to at least be forcing flashes, forcing the issue. When is it going to come for LNG? Because they cannot just sit idly, especially down gold.
Ooh.
And again, it's milkyway that's looking to make the plays. The keeper's verdict does get rid of milkyway, but JiaQi has more than enough damage to get 1 kill. He nearly finds the second onto LP as well.
LP thinking maybe he could get a return kill, not going to be the case. And now Xiaoxu also going to get bullied out of his jungle again. That's the second blue buff in a row he's not been allowed to take. Wins across the board right here for RNG. This is a big problem for LNG. When you have the earlier game composition and it begins falling apart like this, not good.
Oh, there's the Grand Starfall, though. They catch JiaQi recalling on a ward. And with the Killer Instinct, LP picks up that kill. They have Tangyuan here who's trying to trade the damage out with the Rune Prism. Xiaoxu waiting on some cooldowns. Just going to go after Niket and get a second kill. The Realm Warp out for Tangyuan will at least save him. But mistakes for RNG marring a lot of their games and open the door a bit more here for LNG. And milkyway, the hero, was not present, and that's the difference when the skirmishes break out.
Exactly. As much as you have been decently proactive during the early game, that's all coming off the back of having a good early game skirmishing jungler in the Xin Zhao. There's a reason this was B1'd. It's such a priority pick in the meta at the moment, but without it there, like you said, you just don't have that ability to fight and skirmish. And again, Xiaoxu at least making up for the fact he's not had quite the best early game in finding that kill right there. Once again, using that flash stun combo every 5 minutes that's up and available. And at that point, any of these immobile carries who are in a bad spot for themselves, recalling on wards, for instance, just going to get themselves caught out. Yep. Once again, he just goes to pop a ward in, and Zhuo, he's going to be really tanky in the later stages of the game, Slayer, but not at this point.
I love that highlight, though. They zoom in on the ward saying, all right, Zhuo gets the ward down, because without that ward, this play does not even manifest for LNG.
Despite the fact that he dies for it, I think this actually turns into a worthwhile play for LNG. It's worth that ward going down.
Worth for Zhuo. He almost comes back in and gets the revenge, killing off Tangyuan if he doesn't have the Realm Warp up. But live in action, we're fighting over the Rift Herald. Zhuo flies in for Niket. milkyway, popping the Crescent Guard. Zhuo does get himself back out to safety as both top laners teleport in. Shelly is angry. It's soon to reset here. A little far away from her pit, so Shelly crawls back, and RNG are going to actually turn on to the Herald and try and burn through it. With milkyway about half HP, LNG are able to bully Royal Never Give Up off of that pit and grab the Herald.
I really like that ulti there out of Haichao. Drops the Arcane Storm into the backline. Yes, it locks straight on to Zhao, so it doesn't do that much damage, but it dissuades any of that follow-up from the members of RNG. They don't want to walk through it. They don't want to get involved in that fight anymore. They do have to back out. Now, though, we are going to have just 20 seconds until the next Drake is spawning. Multiple members for RNG down towards the bottom side of the map. And actually, Zhuo went top lane right now, interestingly, so isn't necessarily looking to be there around this spawning objective.
We'll see if that Herald can set up for that Drake take. That's usually always how you like to use the Herald. Drop it mid lane, shift down, you have the priority. And that could be enough to grab this second dragon for LNG, knowing that nobody's dropped any turrets, and to be honest, not a lot of plates have even been taken. There's not even really a weak turret on the map. So we'll see if that Herald gets enough value. Is on point right as I talk about the turrets. Haichao gets to thwack away at this top tier 1. And RNG are first towards that dragon. So we'll see what the Herald play looks like for Xiaoxu later on.
There was absolutely no response out of LNG. They were not even slightly interested in getting involved in this play around the dragon. Like you said, they get themselves top lane tower. Actually, they're going to be able to pick that one up first. So that is going to be another move towards the feats.
Well, feats are gone off that dragon, though.
Off the dragon, already, actually, yeah. Because they were able to get themselves all 3 of those grubs earlier on, of course. So that's, not going to be an overall worthwhile play. And interesting that, again, with the slightly better early game composition, we're once again seeing LNG sit back a little bit, not decide to get too aggressive. Very interesting. At the same time, though, we have to reiterate, right? RNG, yes, they've had a decent early game for themselves, but they haven't been able to come out to a lead. Yes, they've got the better late game composition, but they're not a good late game team. This has been one of their biggest weaknesses, is even when they're able to come out of laning phases even, which, I don't know, they haven't managed that often either. They get into the mid to late game, and they just don't know how to team fight. They don't have that same level of proactivity that this new look LNG have.
The only players I can think of that have been locked into some late games for RNG, and this is calling back to like the placement matches. It's been JiaQi had that awesome Kaisa game and milkyway, so good call out there, Bloxer, because we're still a little bit wary of RNG, but milkyway has been ever aggressive, looking for plays and targeting Zhuo constantly, who is just sectioned off and picked off with ease. As we see Zhuo drop for 3 of the 4 kills RNG have grabbed.
We talked a lot about how we really like this Poppy pick, and the Poppy works really well when the whole team is there and you can stop a couple of key dashes and maybe use that ulti to be able to bop somebody away, but by yourself, especially without the flash, super vulnerable at the moment and not particularly tanky at this point in the game either. We are finally going to see the Rift Tower drop. It's going to go down into the mid lane right here for LNG, but there's a lot of members of RNG around. They're just going to get one charge out of it and not even going to be able to convert this into a full tower.
Yeah, maybe it will help them later as their mid tower is still looking a bit healthier by this point, but still waiting on the Ambessa for Zika to get involved. LNG do have some scaling factors with LP and the Victor out of Haichao, but Zika on this Ambessa, one of the premier picks of the LPL right now. When are we going to see a fight? I've yet to see Zika, and not to his issue, really have a window to ever go for the public execution yet.
To be fair, both of these teams have been a little bit shy about going for straight up 4v4, 5v5 types of team fights. We're going to get one of those relatively soon. You've got 2 minutes 20 until the next Drake is going to be spawning. There is an Atakan available up in the top side of the map as well. And at some point, these teams are just going to have to go in for these straight up fights. And that is where you're going to be seeing a lot of extra power coming through or LNG. At the same time, though, their composition is overall pretty single target, right? You're mainly going to be looking to blow up 1 or 2 members. The Ambessa, the Pantheon, the Kaiser, all of those very much looking at one person to be dealing with. It's Haichao who you're relying on to be able to do that AoE. So positioning from RNG going to be critical. If you step too far up right here as Tangyuan or JiaQi, well then that makes this very easy for LNG. If not, if you're blowing all of your damage into one of the members you can actually reach, the Scion or the Rel, well then you're going to be in a much worse spot.
Oh. Look at this, though. Look at this call from milkyway and Tangyuan. They're going to start off Voracious Octagon, which will definitely speed this game up, giving false lives. LNG are trying to roam over, but there are 4 members strong here for RNG. And milkyway, he's taking a lot of damage from Voracious Octagon. He's healing a lot more. And now that LNG have brought the response over, they're going to try and drop aggro. They get the teleport out of Haichao, who does join the party. Voracious Octagon will reset. Now it's LNG's turn to hop on Octagon. As this chess match continues, it's below 4K. Are we really about just 50-50 this thing? False lives will completely swing this fight. Zhuo sends milkyway out of the pit, though. That clutch Poppy ult gets the false lives for LNG. And now do they feel confident enough to fight? The Grand Starfall says yes, but Tangyuan has already picked off one member. Zika flying into the backline does get JiaQi down. They get the big Tristana, but do they have enough in the tank left to fight out? Milkyway certainly says no with his Crescent Guard up, but Zika keeps churning and burning. Gets another kill. There's another recall coming across. All of the gas is out of the tank for LNG. They get the Otacon. They all fall as 5, but it won't end up costing them more than 1,000 gold.
And not going to be the end of the world right there. I mean, for all of the skirmishing, all of the back and forth, it's a small advantage to LNG. You at least managed to take away that Atakan, and the main thing right there is that the Atakan doesn't fully reset. It allows LNG to be able to go and pick that one up for themselves. You can't really use it. You can't grab yourself those false lives and then play around this very soon spawning Drake. But you got a ton of kills onto some key members, and now some key items have come through as well. It's now 2 items on this composition that spikes so hard in this mid game for LNG.
They do have first roam towards this dragon as well. Tangyuan does respawn with Realm Warp. And with that, RNG can muscle their way back into the pit, and LNG again are willing to sacrifice a dragon. But this one is for Soul Point. They have Zika on the top side with teleport. And it looks like LNG are willing to make this trade. Infernal Soul Point for a tier 2 top lane turret that Zika doesn't even feel comfortable going for.
Yeah. Doesn't even feel like he can actually step up for that one. I mean...
What a flash, though.
Yeah, that's lovely to be able to just bob the jungler away. They lose the fight. LNG lose the fight. Even with the Atakan available to them. That's the saving grace right here. If that gets picked up, if you are in the area as Xiaoxu, if you're actually not able to pick that one up, well, this is a complete disaster here for LNG. Instead, it's
totally
fine in the end. Oh, hang on.
Oh boy, but we're fine now with no false lives. Haichao, what is that positioning? The Victor in the worst spot possible. I'll be getting a replay on that to see how that manifests, but that is an egregious kill to give over.
We were surprised to see the Victor because it's very different to the rest of the composition from LNG. Everybody else is looking to go play forwards, be aggressive, jump into the back line, whereas the Victor much more about trying to sit back, likes compositions that jump into you. It's okay to have a little bit of something different to make your composition well-rounded, give you a little bit of the AoE damage too, but you have to be careful with this composition that you don't jump forwards. You don't have any of the mobility tools that everybody else does. It's mainly just Zhuo who walks at him, and there's nothing you can really do as the Victor. I mean, no flash available, you're just dead.
Yeah, all right. Haichao, that's not all on you. You and LP were definitely in the wrong spot. I didn't realize that Zhuo also misses the keeper's verdict, so that one's going to leave a mark for LNG, for sure.
Yikes. Well, still, despite the fact we've had a lot of back and forth, a lot of kills going over in this game, it is still going to be pretty much dead, even in terms of gold, in terms of towers. True. So the game really not out of the realms for either of these teams. LNG, though, they are at their strongest point that they're going to hit in this game.
Likely,
RNG, yeah, they're just going to keep getting better and better with age. So LNG, going to be on them right now to see what they can find. 4-1 and 2 right now for their star Xiaofang jungler. If he's going to be able to win the game for his team again, just another great look for this jungler who's really revitalized what was a struggling, terrible-looking LNG squad.
Yeah, his career, too, is he was spending time on as a sub in the LDL, and now he's making the most of his second time stepping into an LPL roster. But as you called out, the scaling threats for RNG are really growing. This is a 2-item Scion that is super, super tanky. And Tangyuan, who's had all the time in the world to farm up, nearly has, 250 CS. He's got the Saris, the Roa fully stacked up, and Azania's not too far away. So he can really churn and burn a lot of the damage markers as Zika finds a 1v1 with milkyway with Realm Warp available. It's not a 1v1, it's a 2 versus 1. The public execution does come down. Tangyuan might be caught here. He goes into the stasis, but they can't commit to find the kill. Xiaofang throws a spear, chucks it right at the head of Tangyuan. Right when we're talking about the rise being pivotal, it falls and gives an opening to LNG.
And this is the thing, we've been talking about how we also wanted Zika to step up at some point. Well, there you go, 3 items now completed, and this is the thing with Ambessa. Yes, it looks like you've nearly killed her, but the amount of shielding and dashes available to this champion is immense. Zika didn't even have the flash available and was still able to hit that key public execution onto Tangyuan, make that one work. Now, the ulti gonna come through, bops away
Xiaoxu. Yeah, so they'll be able to finally take this mid lane tier 1 turret that they wanted this thing bad, Bloxer. So that does open up the map a lot more and will really help towards vision setup for this Baron.
Baron going to be key right now, as we've been saying, right? Both of these teams have having a little bit of struggles to actually get on top of these towers. RNG will be able to melt them through if they're able to get there, but so far, really haven't seen that be the case. So Baron going to be critical for whoever can pick it up. LNG looking like they're in a pretty good spot at the moment, especially if you can find some more of these key picks out of Zika, out of Xiaofang. And these items really are arriving. We will see a replay of this one. Yes, Zika does take a lot of damage, but at the same time, it's the fact that Tangyuan immediately gets hit by the public execution. It gives Zika a way out more than anything.
I wonder what this looks like if Tangyuan waits a little bit longer, milkyway with the ult up, because what happens if you bring Niket and JiaQi with you in Tangyuan? You don't get singled out.
No. And maybe at that point, Zika's already decided he needs to pop the public execution.
Those little small mistakes is what really has marred RNG's season, and the biggest weakness that Bloxer's pointed out so well has been the team fighting. Being cohesive, making a call and sticking to it. Can RNG put that together and accomplish design to win exactly through that way with a huge win con in this Infernal Soul now spawned on the map, and we're all mid lane. LNG need to find this dragon, but will they be willing to trade the Baron? Because RNG, they'll happily take that bargain.
Absolutely, and you can see just the utter darkness right now around that buff. There they
Death
go.
Rush. They're going for Zhuo. Does not get the Keeper's Verdict off. He wants Crescent Guard by space. Niket does get traded out. Watch JiaQi Tangyuan as the Arcane Storm comes over. Tangyuan flashing forward to get the rune to Haichao. Public Execution goes on to Xiaoxu. Everybody trying to draw these battle lines, but who's going to dash forward?
LP.
It's the Killer Instinct from LP. Knocks down Xiaoxu. There's no more front line left as the Grand Starfall comes across. JiaQi falls next, but Haichao's being heralded by milkyway.
Ooh.
He can't find the kill. Great flash from Haichao. And Xiaofeng finds the critical kills. LNG in an absolute bloodbath will not relent. And it's a Xiaofeng triple kill to put a star on top.
Oh boy, LNG, they were playing that one on a knife's edge. Haichao nearly flashes into the final win, becomes lightning, but manages to avoid it. They're going to pick themselves up this Drake. Baron will live to see another day, but it was terrifying. Zhuo had to step up at some point. You couldn't be living with the possibility that the Baron was just going to go down right there. This play is such a mess back and forth. More than anything, though, it's just this Arcane Storm dealing mass damage onto the backline. It keeps these backliners... They have to be careful. They have to keep stepping back. I love LP jumping in there. It looks like it was a bit of a risk, but at the same time, once the front line is down, then you unlock Haichao to be able to play this one. Haichao so nearly flashes into his own demise right there. But Xiaofeng, it's all good. Just able to clean it up. 8-1-4 right here on the Pantheon. Had a slow early game. Was pretty quiet for the first 15 minutes. The following 15, he has exploded onto the Rift.
And now, LNG maybe sighing a breath of fresh air, knowing that they can dictate the tempo of this game a bit more. At the very least, they don't have to worry about that dastardly trade, Infernal Soul for Dragon, but they're playing with a new confidence after that fight win. And finally, Zika getting another clutch public execution. It's on the Milky Way of all people. The catalyst, the front of the spear for all of RNG's early game team fight wins has fallen early. And the rest of the team is scattered to the wayside, running for the hills as Zika just burns through the horse and Niket. Baron, a free win here with the pick. LNG back to their team fight winning ways that have won them so many games in series so far in Group Nirvana.
There we go. It looked good for RNG throughout the early stages, and at the point at which their composition was beginning to get online, just begin to fall down. LNG, they're finding these fights in such an impressive way, all off the back, like you said, of their main jungler. Man, oh man. This is a farewell tour for RNG. It feels like that, and it has done for a little while. It feels so bad for such a storied organization who had so many years of being dominant, of being a true contender in the internationals as well, to at this point be staring down the barrel of just being gone.
0-3 would nearly eliminate them from Split 3, end their year. RNG have to stem the bleeding, not allow themselves to reel down in this game too. They still can lean on the fact that they have such potent scaling damage threats and a front line. But those hopes are dwindling. A massive gold lead, a Baron power play, looking to push it further over. RNG need to buy time, turtle as best they can. Because if they don't, the series is over, their season will nearly be over, and that would mean that their calendar year is finished.
Just so unfortunate right here for RNG. It just feels terrible. The fact that they were able to get themselves into a good spot here in this game, it wasn't looking like it was going to be a terrible time for them. It was looking like maybe they could play it. Maybe they still can. Maybe they can pull their way back, but with the Baron buff up and available for LNG, with these towers crumbling right in front of their eyes, it just doesn't feel like they've got any way to get back into this game. It's going to take a bit of a miracle engage between the Rel, the Scion, and the Xin Zhao. It's not impossible, but God, does it feel unlikely.
At the very least, they're not losing too much on this Baron power play yet. They lose the mid-tier 2. You're going to have to sack this bottom lane one as well with no real protection from mid lane by this point. Another wave comes up, and RNG have to back up further, create a makeshift barrier further back, but LNG are going to be happy with their 2 turrets grabbed by this point and look to reset and grab more critical items by this point. We talked about some of their scaling threats. You've got Haichao on 3 items, the roll fully stacked, Zhonya's done, and this full AD build designed to burn through the front line of RNG for LP. is definitely arrived with the LDR, IE, Yuntal. Yeah, I mean, this is a 4-item Kaisa too. So as much as we talked about the RNG scaling threats, LNG have some of their own that are very much so online and ahead of their counterparts.
Yeah, just got themselves into better spots at this point in the game. They've been able to scale up so effectively. Like, there are decent items on a couple of these members, and this Scion is just going to get tankier and tankier and tankier, but you've gone for a build right here on LP that should be able to deal with Xiaoxu at some point, right? You're not just going to be completely unable to take out this Scion as you get later into the game. It really isn't impossible. This composition is getting stronger and stronger here for RNG, but they just haven't shown that they're able to play it out correctly.
Now with no Baron, they're going to try and start a fight, but hello, there's been a secret mission on the back end. Tangyuan gets picked by both Zika and Xiaofeng. RNG are going to try and force the fight on the other end. The Buster shot does nearly get the kill onto Haichao, but he survives. He leaves LP to his own devices, but with no damage dealers left, it's actually LP getting turned on. LP knocking down Xiaoxu without milkyway in his collapse. The black hole of LNG find the ace and might put the final dagger in this series. A commanding 2-0 to send RNG to the despair of 0-3 in Group Nirvana.
LNG, they put themselves in a spot where now they've played all of their Group Nirvana games. There is a possibility, a chance that they might even get to move on up and play more League of Legends this split, get themselves into the play-ins. For RNG, this may well be it. This may well be the final nail in the coffin that sends them tumbling out of the LPL for split number 3. Ends their entire year right here. LNG, 2-0 RNG in dominant fashion.
Congratulations to LNG. No matter what the rest of Group Nirvana looks like, if this is where they end Split 2, they're going to end Split 2 in the Xiaofeng era, undefeated in series, undefeated in games as well, Bloxer, as they, in this 3-series win sprint, did not drop a single great game in Group Nirvana. Oh, how the tables have turned for LNG. Oh, how the tables have turned in the milkyway and Xiaofeng discussions. Just a year ago, it was milkyway that was winning Rookie of the Split. milkyway talked about as the next big jungler, and while we don't give a lot of the RG issues over to him, wins are wins, stat lines are there for a reason, and Xiaofeng has been the better jungler ever since he started in the starting role, and shows it in this series.
I feel like at some point, right, there are some teams currently sat in Group Ascend who, there've been some jungle issues, right? There's been some jungle woes.
That's
Maybe
true.
you take a flyer on this guy for the next split. He's very unlikely gonna be playing for this LNG squad going forwards unless they've got him locked down in a contract. I mean, he's looking so good, and it's been such a nice turnaround for his career, for LNG in general. It's been so fun to watch. For RNG, though, I feel like we have to speak about them a little bit right here.
Of course.
They had a good early game on a composition that is very much just reliant on milkyway, the jungler we highlighted before the series, doing well, and he did, but they just could not turn it around into good team fights.
Yeah, they crumbled in spots. We saw some of those little issues, and we'll see them come through in these replays, right? It started with the pick play when Milky Way gets caught out. We pointed it out well. The first fight that you could possibly have with the Realm Warp advantage, you give the man advantage. Tangyuan gets it's too much hasty. It's too hasty. He goes for the play, leaves his bottom lane, gets picked off, and from there the fights just weren't going their way. It's what's plagued RNG the most. No matter how much Milky Way creates space for his other lanes, if they're not polished as a squad team fighting in a league like the LPL, this is the result. You're not winning series.
Yeah. Free Milky Way is the correct hashtag to be spamming at this point, right? Like, I don't know necessarily that he's gonna reach those same highs that he did during his rookie splits, but at the same time, he is still trying to turn this squad around. Part of the reason it feels like LNG's been able to get this full turnaround going is because with Xiaofeng coming in, everybody else feels like they've also stepped up their game. They were all playing better. Zika had some terrible performances across the course of the last couple months, and now actually has been looking really good. Had a nice and better performance, looked great on the Rumble as well. If RNG can't step up in any of their lanes, there's only so much that a jungler can do. Even then, right, there's more issues to this team than just not quite having a good enough jungle, not quite having good enough lanes. It's the overall team play. It's all sorts of things, you know? And it's the fact that this might be the last that we see of RNG that just it feels so rough.
And knowing the history of this team, right? I mean, this has been the org that has been a part of. It might have the org that suited up who could be the first Hall of Legends LPL player.
Yeah.
They've been competitive. They've had huge international performances. They've won LPL splits. Like, this is not just an organization that came up recently for the LPL and has struggled to really find its mark. This is an LPL org that was at the top of the LPL, points at nearly at the top of the international stage. To see them fall this far from graces is painful to see, and these stats support it as the ending series highlights are going to roll through. And exactly what we were pointing out earlier, Bloxer, we're going to see it. milkyway creating advantages, but it doesn't matter when the Nexus falling ends up being theirs.
Exactly. Really, really unfortunate for RNG right here. Great turnaround, though, as LNG. And it's worth highlighting once again that it's not within their own hands fully. There is a possibility that we get to see more LNG play. They've now ended their split at 3-2. LGD could go undefeated. They could be 5-0. But EDG, they are currently at 2-1. They've not played a ton of their games yet. They've still got the possibility of going on a long loss streak. Do I think it's likely? Not really. But at the same time as LNG, since you brought in this new jungler, you've done everything you needed to potentially get yourself a couple of matchups versus some of these Group Ascend teams. Exactly what you would have wanted to do with this turnaround, and it's given hope for the next split. Although I don't expect this LNG roster to be exactly the same, going into split number 3, getting yourself off of the bottom of the table, putting yourself in a position where maybe you could compete for the playoffs. This is a great turnaround, and it's so fun to watch. It's the same thing, right, that we've been seeing for Team WE in Group Ascend, where the team looked real bad, and all of a sudden, they just get it together. That wasn't a change of players, that was just the team seems to have started clicking at this point. And it's great to see this rise from teams who looked like they were down and out.
As we're going to look at these big team fight replays, this is what really broke it open here for LNG. Tangyuan trying to flash forward, create some space, but finally we got that big Ambessa, and it's, of course, Xiaoxu, who I think will end up with player of the game here. He has an incredible score line, and he plays this Pantheon so well to grab another MVP. It ends up with a triple kill in that fight, and it was just downhill. But as we go through these highlights, I do want to point something out that is very poetic as we discuss LNG's fate as potentially staying as that second team going to the play-ins. You mentioned EDG, who they likely have to lose both their series to go down. Do you know who one of those series is going to be against?
Well, who's it against?
It's RNG. It is going to be against RNG. It's going to be their second to last series with them still not mathematically eliminated. So talking about math, to eliminate them from Split 3 and end their entire year, they'll have to lose to EDG. So they'll be able to go from losing a series painfully against LNG to potentially giving LNG their berth into more Split 2 action. How poetic is that?
It's always a possibility. At the same time, though, RNG and picking up a win in this season, the one you're looking towards really is their matchup that's going to be later on in this week versus OMG. Both of those teams have been looking rough. I gotta be honest, I think RNG have been looking a little bit worse overall. Not that OMG have been looking good either, but it has been a truly terrible time for OMG.
There we go.